Good evening, mortals of the light. It's me, Derios again, review of another video game that you've probably never heard of. This video will not get much views either. Hey Derios! How were you introduced to this game anyway, since it seems to be quite on the obscure end? Good question. I discovered it upon watching someone's review on it, CGR Undertow specifically. In fact, that channel and a few others is how I found out about a lot of somewhat obscure games, like Solitaire Robo, Red the Hunter. Boy, am I glad I've got that in 2015 and not now. Yeesh. By the way, is it just me, or do our voices sound clearer now? As if they were coming from new recording equipment or something. I don't know what you're talking about, sorry. Oh come on, I can't be the only one who notices these things. Let's just get to the game already. Scurge Hive is an isometric action-adventure game. In other words, a Metroidvania. And yeah, I know some people don't like that term, but I do not care. I'm going to be using it for the rest of the review. And even Nintendo has used it a few times. As I was saying, the game was developed by Orbital Media, published by South Peak Games, and was released in 2006 for the Game Boy Advance and the Nintendo DS. Well, in North America and Europe anyway. I don't think it was released in Japan. That usually happens with most Western developed titles, as this game was one. And oddly enough, this is the only thing Orbital Media released for the DS. Everything else they put out was for the GBA. According to Wikipedia, they had some other stuff planned for the DS, but those were cancelled. How peculiar. Just like with the last game I looked at, Contact, critical reception was mixed, and despite the game being released on 2 systems, it didn't sell well. At all. But is it worth your time and or money? Well, let's travel to planet Innos and see if we get the full picture. Also, I'm going to be looking at the DS version for this review. Not that it makes much of a difference, as both versions play identical to one another as far as I'm aware. Here's a rundown of the game's plot. A distress signal has been picked up from a facility on a planet called Innos. The place in question was formed to study samples of something called Scurge, an alien entity that is capable of infecting and manipulating biological, mechanical, and energy-based life forms. You know, that sounds very familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. You play as Genosa Arma, a bounty hunter that has been tasked with finding out what happened at said facility. For the mission, she was given a suit that was used there, which is capable of slowing down Scurge infections, and has been armed with a projectile gauntlet to help fight against creatures infected with the entity. And according to the manual, Genosa only took the job because of how high the contract paid. But after hearing the secretary nervously give her the rundown, she says in quotes, "I never should have taken this job." And for the most part, that's the whole story. There's dialogue throughout the game, but most of it is just chatter between Genosa and her AI companion Magellan. Apart from some data logs left behind by the workers that used to be there, and some transmissions from 1 or 2 characters here and there, that's it really. I don't think it's bad. The story is fine for what it is, just an observation I made. And I'm purposely leaving out details because I want everyone who actually decides to try it to uncover the rest of the details for themselves. I'm not doing a spoiler section this time. Here's how Scurge Hive plays. In the DS version, the main gameplay is on the top screen. It can check and move around your map on the touchscreen, which is very handy if you're on the hunt for something. In the GBA version, you have to access the map in a separate menu. Moving a bounty hunter is done with a D-pad. You jump with A, fire your current weapon by holding B. Holding L allows you to switch weapons. This menu in particular reminds me a lot of the quick select from the Ratchet & Clank series. Oh, and you could use your tether with R, once you acquire it that is. Also, firing your weapon depletes the charge bar in the top right corner of the screen, so you kinda keep attacking forever. Defeating enemies will have them drop bio energy. collecting will restore your health and give you some experience. When enough of it is collected, you'll level up and your health and charge bars will get bigger. Progression is all standard fare, but two things you'll find yourself doing a lot is collecting security cards to open doors and dragging around nodes to reactivate teleport nexuses. So I guess the gameplay structure does get a bit repetitious. I think it's even lampshaded during certain cutscenes. Of course, since this is a Metroidvania, you'll have to collect upgrades to progress. Strangely enough, there's next to no backtracking in this game. Most of your time is spent at the Biocore complex, but you'll visit new areas for progression and upgrades. However, once you've done everything in that place, you never need to go back there. In fact, you don't even have the option to go back there. They're all points of no return. So this game is definitely more streamlined than other games in the genre. In order to obtain an upgrade from a room, you'll have to shoot all the posts in it within a time. The early areas aren't very complicated, but the later ones do require some strategic thinking. How about we go over what each of the upgrades do? There's the aforementioned Tether, which allows Genosa to drag around crates, frozen enemies, and Nexus nodes. Yikes, she must be really well built to be dragging around something that heavy. You also later get an upgrade that gives it the ability to grab onto security nodes and allow you to slingshot yourself from platform to platform. There's a double jump, pretty self-explanatory. Then there are two upgrades that pretty much function as progression gates. One being an upgrade that allows you to see in dark areas, and another that allows you to survive in rooms filled with toxic gas. Next are the gauntlet upgrades. You start off with this default shot. I don't think it's given a proper name. It works on all enemies, but it's the weakest of them all. The jack of all trades, master of none, if you will. Next are the free gauntlet weapons. The EMP gauntlet does massive damage to mechanical enemies and can be used to power up mechanical pillars. The Dissipator gauntlet deals huge damage to energy-based enemies and can be used to open doors locked by energy barriers. And the Combustion gauntlet deals massive damage to biological enemies in addition to being used for burning withered vines. Be careful though, if you use them on the wrong enemies, it'll make them stronger instead of dealing damage. Now for the other gauntlet upgrades. The Cryostasis upgrade allows you to temporarily freeze enemies and drag them around like crates. The Adrenaline Rush upgrade slows down time around you, allowing you to avoid hazards that moving at lightning speeds, or maybe to avoid enemies that are giving you too much trouble. Then there's the Plasma Explosives, bombs you can throw and use to destroy rubble that's blocking doors. And finally, the Elusive Ultra Shot, which is the strongest weapon in the game, but you can only use it during the final boss's third phase. In a normal playthrough anyway. We'll get back to that. You've probably noticed the percentage on the top of the screen. This is one of the game's main quirks, the Scurge Meter. Early on in the story, Genosa gets infected with Scurge, but as brought up during the overview, she was given a suit that can slow down the infection of the entity. The numbers go up in real time, and standing on the wrong surfaces can make it go up even faster. If it reaches 100%, you'll start losing health. The only way to reset is to visit these decontamination platforms, which also function as save points, or by collecting these orbs when defeating a boss. The Scurge Meter definitely adds a lot of tension to this game, and there were a lot of close calls with it during the playthrough I did for this review. Scurge Hive isn't without flaws. I don't have much issues with the gameplay, other than the isometric view can make things a wee bit hard to make things out visually, but there are some technical problems that are distracting and slightly hinder the experience. Sometimes when too many sound effects play at once, the background music stops. There were multiple times where I saw certain sprites appearing on the wrong layer for some reason. I should probably also bring up the time where I somehow got outside of the playing field. There was also this one time, whilst doing my playthrough on the hardest difficulty, where I fell through the floor and came back down through the ceiling. I don't have footage of it, but take my word, it did happen. This is also one of those games that have a really annoying beeping noise when you're low on health. Just because Metroid does it doesn't mean you should too. At the end of a section, you'll fight a boss, and I think they're great. They test your abilities and try to make use of the upgrades you collected for that section. Also, remember to experiment with your weapons on them. because some could do more damage than others. But I absolutely freaking detest the final boss. It has 3 phases, and you're back to the first phase if you happen to kick the bucket. Whoa, deja vu. First phase isn't so bad. The second phase, while a wee bit annoying, is doable. But I absolutely freaking detest the third phase. During this part, the final boss, as a last resort, attaches itself to Genosa, so this battle takes place in her head. And you can't use any of your other weapons and upgrades during this, only the Ultra Shot. You still have double jump though, thankfully. It doesn't seem so bad at first sight, as it just flies around while shooting projectiles, but after every couple of seconds or so, it will make an attempt to collide with you, and when it does, a Genosa core is created. And please take my advice, when this happens, focus all your fire on the clones. If 3 clones are created, it will make an attempt to do a super attack that could drain your health in seconds. It'll never finish you off though, so theoretically, you could attempt to take it out while it keeps doing that, and avoid the Genosa clone's attacks, but it is a risky strategy. Oh yeah, did I also mention that this boss has 9 health bars? But despite how annoying I made it out to be, I managed to take it out my first try during the playthrough I did for this review, and for boss rush mode. So I guess it's not so bad when you have hindsight and previous experience. Still, I do think this is the most annoying boss here, and it's kinda sad to see the game end on a bit of a sour note. When you clear the game, you unlock the hard difficulty and the ability to change Genosa's color palette. I wasn't even using her normal colors for this playthrough. Normally she has red hair and a blue suit, but I was using this purple and black one since it matches my color scheme. It also kind of reminds me of Shantae now that I look at it. The ponytail specifically. Beating the game on hard unlocks the insane difficulty and a boss rush mode. There's not much to say about the latter, it's just a boss rush mode, and you go through every one with the upgrades you had during that point in the game. I don't think you get anything for beating it. When I finished it, the game was stuck on this black screen. Either that or it crashed. So if you enjoy those kind of challenges, have fun I suppose. And finally, finishing the game on Insane unlocks Ultra mode, which allows you to play through the game with the Ultra Shot instead of your default weapon and maxed out HP. The harder difficulties don't change much other than the damage output enemies and bosses do, and the amount health pickups restore I think. But holy hell, I had a horrible time with Insane mode! I decided to finish it before reviewing this game, just so I could get my thoughts and show off Ultra mode. It was manageable in the beginning, but merciful Hades, the game certainly wasn't pulling any punches during the latter half. In fact, sometimes I found myself running away from everything just so I could avoid taking damage. And the less I see about attempting the final boss in this mode, the better. Seriously, I'd be cutting up a storm if I did. The sprite work and presentation for this title is top notch. I'm a bit of a sucker for well-made pixel art. And I love how the UI and menus look all futuristic, like the technology in this universe. I also love Genosa's character design, mainly her huge ponytail. Look at that thing, it's like it has a mind of its own. The only gripe I have with the visuals is that, again, the isometric view can throw you off sometimes, and those layering problems I mentioned earlier. The soundtrack is very well done. It's both catchy and very atmospheric. But get this, the composer for this game was none other than Jake Kaufman. He's known for doing the soundtrack for all these games for those not in the know. I won't say the OST is as good as some of his more well-known works, but I still think it's really good in its own right and worth a listen. By the by, a weird little tidbit, but I think there's a track that goes unused in the DS version. It's the theme when you're checking the map on the GBA version. I have it playing right now. Since the map is always on the bottom screen on DS, the track never plays. And I've tried looking in the other menus to see if it plays there, but it doesn't. Weird. In closing, Scurge Hive, despite a few technical and difficulty issues here and there, is a fun and unique Metroidvania for the GBA and DS, even if the game seems like a massive Metroid ripoff at times. But hey, if you're gonna make a ripoff of something, at least make it good or put your own spin on it, which this game does with flying colors. It may not be perfect, but it's still a fun time. So if you're into the Metroid series or games in that genre, give this one a try. The second-hand prices on it aren't too bad. I wish I could say the same for contacts. Also, sorry for not showing how much contact goes for in my review of that. I just forgot to. You wanna know the saddest thing though? This game's story ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and a to be continued can be seen in the credits. So it's clear that Orbital Media wants to make a follow-up someday, but that's never gonna happen now since they went defunct in 2014. But you kinda just leave me on the edge of my seat like that with no follow-up. We need to know how Genosa's story ends. Hashtag save Genosa Armor or something like that. You know, I'm probably the only person that cares about little things like this. Man, I need new hobbies. I should probably end things here before I start contemplating my life again. So thank you for watching, stay safe, and remember, not all things dark are evil.